So tell us a little bit about how you got into that market or a marketing industry, and then how you came out of it the other side, being a professional speaker, helping now small businesses with these billion-dollar ideas.
Yeah, well, everything builds, right? So I started out my my journey in a small 4,000 person town in Wisconsin with one stoplight. You know, now since then,
Yeah.
they've got 2 stoplights, 100% growth.
And
in
the McDonald's, maybe?
Yeah, they had a Hardee's. Now we got a Burger King and a McDonald's. I
High
mean,
class.
it's big time now. And so people say, well, how did you go from there to managing $1 billion brands? So I joined the military, paid my way through college, and came out, and I was an industrial real estate appraiser. Very exciting, yeah.
Yeah.
And I decided, listen, I want to do something bigger. I want to do something better. I want to go back to business school. So I got accepted to a top business school, University of Michigan, and came out and got a job at Procter & Gamble.
Were you really good in school? Because it sounds like you had kind of a vision of what you wanted to do, and you went to a school to do that. But were you a good student, and how was that going through college too?
It's funny, right? I was a little better than mediocre student at University of Wisconsin in undergrad. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in the big, most prestigious places, they don't want people that are the top of their class. Mm-hmm. They also want people that bring unique skills and diversity.
Yeah.
Right. So I was in the military. I was from a small town. I grew up poor. I had experience working at a boot camp for at-risk kids. They want some people that bring a different, I wasn't a 4.0 student.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and interestingly, when you go to an interview at these, and so I wanted to, I go to business school. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And they do like finance industry, work 80 hours a week on Wall Street, do consulting, right? Like, oh, you want to go and travel 5 days a week? Well, I kind of do that now, but I don't want to do that. And so I heard about brand management, and I'm like, oh, brand management? That sounds like kind of like running a business.
What year was that? Ish.
I was in business school 97 to 99. So 98,
right.
I'm evaluating, what am I going to do?
So dot-com burst right there. I mean, that's
2000.
The real big. At that time, it was just huge.
Yeah, I remember I bought a book on this thing called Amazon back then. Yeah, it was like, ooh, they mailed it right to me.
Yeah, I was telling you earlier that Jeff Hoffman was in here. Jeff Hoffman actually created the first Amazon business model.
Oh, wow.
And you know why it failed? People were afraid to put their credit card information in this thing.
I mean, that's way back, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in business school, and I'm like, oh, being a brand manager, that sounds kind of like being in business, like being an entrepreneur, right? Except without all the risk, right? So I interview with Procter & Gamble. Turns out Procter & Gamble
Where were they located?
Cincinnati.
Okay.
And so
right there in the heartland.
Yeah, they've got hundreds of brands that are billion-dollar brands, and I'm interviewing with P&G. I got no marketing experience. I was a real estate guy.
Yeah.
Right? So P&G, turns out they don't care if you have marketing experience. You know why? They're the best marketers in the world. Why would they care?
What is a person going to bring to this organization?
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. They just need the cogs in the machine.
Well, no, it's not that. In fact, the opposite. What they interview for one thing: leadership. Show me that you are a natural born leader, and we will teach you how to be a marketer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And so their interview goes like this. Oh, tell me about a time when you were a leader. And then you give them some stupid business school example.
Yeah. And also you had the military
right
to fall back on.
Right. You see how this all, everything builds, right? Yeah. And so then I'm interviewing with them, and they're like, well, what about leadership beyond business school? Oh, I'm like, well, let me tell you about when I was at a boot camp for at-risk kids. Oh, let me tell you about when I was in the military. Let me tell you about when I was leadership. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you're our guy.
So it's funny because I hold masterminds for speakers, and I've only been paid to speak a few times, but I understand what's important, and I understand the power of storytelling. It sounds to me like that interview was exactly what we do as paid speakers on stage, and to get that message through from stage you had these automatic, you didn't have to think about it, you didn't have to memorize it. It's not like you went to these interviews and I said, oh, I got to remember these 5 things.
Right. Well, it's what I teach today, which is when someone is interviewing you, talking to you, thinking about buying from you, considering buying from you versus all your competitors, oh, you should let me into your business school. You should let me come and work for Procter and Gamble because they're like, well, when were you a leader? I'm like, oh, I was a leader in this, and here's what I did. So you should hire me because I was a leader, because I was a leader there, because I did this, because I did this.
Yeah.
What's your proof about why you're better than all the other options out there?
Yeah, we call that as which means to you. Right.
Right.
That's what we really, and that's on the sales side of it though. But here's my because, which means to you, which benefits you in this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so your model goes in reverse of mine, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So anyway, I get to business school, I get to Procter and Gamble, and now I'm in like marketing. I don't know anything about marketing, right? And so I get into marketing as a leader at Procter and Gamble. I came out, I got to Coors Brewing Company because P&G wasn't the best cultural fit for me. Get to Coors, beer industry, better cultural fit. I move on. And while I'm there, I meet this guy who was a professional speaker, and I'm like, professional, and I love being in front of an audience. I grew up in my little town. I was the lead in all the high school plays. Like when I'm in presenting to the distributor community at Coors, I'm like, I love being in front of the audience.
That's your jam.
It was like my thing. I'm like this. And so I meet this guy who's a professional speaker, and I'm like, you're a professional speaker. He goes, yeah. I'm like, so how long do you speak for? He's like, well, I speak for like, an hour.
Yeah.
I'm like, how much does someone pay you to speak for like an hour? And he's like, $5,000.
Right.
And this is 2006, right? And I'm like, $5,000. Like, wow. I'm like,
you're doing the
like,
math.
How many times a year do you do this? He goes, 80 to 100. I'm like, whoa, my, right? And I have an MBA from a top school. I'm running a $2 billion brand, and he's running circles around me like I'm a joke. And I asked him, I said, well, what did you do before you were a professional speaker? And he's like, I was a high school teacher. I'm like, what can I get? What could I say that someone would pay me $5,000 to say? And I started to marinate on this over the years. And then what I figured out was, I'm like, I've been a brand manager, a vice president for multiple billion-dollar brands. Maybe people want to know what billion-dollar brands know, and that's how I can launch my speaking career.
That is beautiful.